Hi, so I'm going to do some book talks tonight since we missed class. So these are realistic books that have to do with like current issues and important things that adolescents are going through. So I'm going to start off with Ellen Hopkins's books. So I have Perfect, okay? This is Ellen Hopkins. It looks like a really big book, but it's actually a novel in verse. So all of the entire book is in poetry. So this one is about a girl and several other, actually there's several characters, and it's how they think that they have to be perfect according to what society thinks that they need to be. Here's another Ellen Hopkins book, Glass. This goes along with Crank. Okay, these books actually were based on Ellen Hopkins's daughter's experience. So it's exactly what you think it is. So Crank was the first one. So her daughter became addicted to meth. And it goes back and forth between 2 points of view. There's one point of view that is the Christina, which is the daughter herself. And then when she's on Crank, she becomes Bree. So Crank is the first one, and then Glass is the second one. Once again, novels in verse, so they're not as long as they look. Super, super good. Usually if I get somebody to read an Ellen Hopkins book, they become an immediate fan. So be aware. There's a couple more. Identical is another book by Ellen Hopkins. This one has to do with a girl who is sexually abused by her by her dad. There are identical twins, and so only one of them is being abused. The other one is not. Super, super good. All right. Then there's Smoke. Smoke has to do with there's a girl named Patton. Okay, and this is actually the second book. The first one is called Burned, and I don't have that one. So the first book, Burned, has to do with Patton being physically abused by her dad. She's from a Mormon family in Utah, and she actually has to go and live with her aunt to try to escape from the abuse. And he doesn't want her to date a guy, and so there's a lot of like kind of controlling behaviors with the dad. I'll just hold up a couple more. This one is a sequel as well. The first one is called Tricks, and it is about teen prostitution and how teens are kind of forced and tricked into becoming prostitutes. And then Rumble, and Rumble is about a boy named Matt, and his brother was his brother committed suicide, and so it's kind of how Matt is dealing with that problem. I haven't read this one for a while, so I'm gonna have to remember what it's about. But every one of Ellen Hopkins's books I would highly recommend, but make sure you start at the first book of whatever series that you're looking at. All right, then this one's brand new. I just got from the English Teachers Convention. This is Jordan Sonnenblick. I really love Jordan Sonnenblick as well, so any of his books I would recommend. This particular one has to do with a girl whose dad suffered from a stroke, and so it's how she is kind of dealing with the aftermath of her dad having a stroke, okay, and figuring out how she should deal with that, and letting her friends know, and just even dealing with her dad and figuring out how to be positive and to be around him when he's not the same as he was before. So this one's Falling Over Sideways, but Jordan Sonnenblick, okay, is the author. Any of his books I would highly recommend. Next, I have a couple of Chris Crutcher books. Let me see if I can pull out the other one. They're not all in order. I'll find the other one somewhere. Okay, well, I'll just hold up this one. So this is period 8. Chris Crutcher was the author that we were going to read, and then I switched it to the All-American Boys. So he writes tons of very realistic fiction. He's actually from Spokane. And so that's kind of fun. And the other exciting thing about it is that, you know, pretty much all of his books, he used to be a like work for Child Protective Services type of thing. And so a lot of his books are based on that experience. And so he's using some of those events, some of those things that he learned from the various kids that he helped along the way. And it usually has a sports theme with it as well, because so there's a lot of appeal for boys in these books. So this one's period 8. It's pretty much everybody goes to a period 8 at the end of the day, and it's this random group of kids, and so it's kind of the story of all these random kids that are in period 8 and how they deal with each other and how they come to terms and come to grips with who they are. Okay, then I actually have several books that are regarding school shootings, so I'll just kind of go through those pretty fast, but this is exactly what a lot of these books are, because this is a current interest that I have, so it would be interesting to have you guys read those. So this one is called Mockingbird. It's by Catherine Erskine. Okay, oh, can't see that. Catherine Erskine. And what it is, it's a girl who is on the autism spectrum, and her brother has actually been killed by a school shooter. And so it's just her aftermath of how she's dealing with it. And she already has emotional, issues of dealing with change. And so losing her brother has really affected her a lot. So, it's a super good book. She's 10 years old when it happens. And so it just kind of takes you through and takes you into her mind as an autism, as somebody who has autism, and how you deal with stuff like that. Okay, And We Stay. So once again, this is another school shooting book, And We Stay by Jenny Hubbard. So this one is about a girl named Emily Beam. She actually ends up going to a different school following the school shooting. It was her her boyfriend who went in and took a gun and threatened her, actually, and then killed himself. And so she starts going to a different school, and it's kind of how she deals with that. But then she ends up sort of communing with Emily Dickinson, because she's in the same town where Emily Dickinson was from. So that's that one. Let's keep going. Okay, Taking Aim. This one's kind of interesting. So this one is edited by Michael Cart. So it's Power and Pain, Teens and Guns. What this is actually, see all of these different authors. Every chapter is by a different author. So there's a chapter about like the gun, or there's a chapter about a boy who has low self-esteem and takes a gun to school. It's a bunch of different essays, sort of, or every chapter is written by somebody else. So there's 16 different chapters, and it kind of goes through this idea of gun culture, gun owners, motivation of shooters, gun violence, everything like that. So it's really an interesting collection, okay, by lots of great authors. There's tons of great authors in this book, and I can go through and kind of tell you. Chris Crutcher's in it again. Alex Flynn, who I'm going to talk another book about in a minute. Walter Dean Myers, who I'm going to talk a book about in a minute, as well as Jenny Hubbard, who I just book talked. So anyway, so I think you'd like this one as well. Then Endgame by Nancy Garden, sorry. I would actually recommend Nancy Garden's books as well. She's written a lot of LGBTQ books. She's actually one of the pioneers of writing about LGBTQ. This book is not about that. This is a kid named Gray Wilton. He is actually telling the story from jail. He's already in jail for shooting. And it takes you into his head, really, as things are happening, and you understand why he did what he did, even though it's still not justified, but you really understand because he was extremely, extremely bullied by people. And I think this could be a really good book that you would really like. It's called Endgame by Nancy Garden. All right, here's Shooter by Walter Dean Myers. So this was the one I just said that he would be coming up. So this one is interesting because it's sort of organized as, it would be called a postmodern book. It's organized as an interview. So it takes place where he is actually, the shooter's already dead, and there's this other kid that was his friend, and so they're interviewing him, and so the detective interviews him, just trying to find out if he actually knew anything about it. And so then it also takes you into like the police report, and so there's all these different like genres of writing actually within the whole book. So some of it is an interview, some of it is the journal of Lynn, who was the shooter. It's different newspaper articles. There's just a ton of different things, and so it helps you get the whole picture of what happened and maybe why, based on all of these varieties of text that are within this book. Okay. Next, Give a Boy a Gun by Todd Strasser. Also another author that I would highly recommend. He's got another one that I think you would really like. And so this one, Give a Boy a Gun, what this one's pretty much is these two kids, Brendan and Gary, they've been teased, they've been harassed, and they decide to go to the school dance, and they end up taking hostages. They have guns, and that their main thing is to get revenge. And so this one's another one that's kind of organized in a postmodern way, because what it is there's a girl who comes back from college, and she's trying to find out like what's really going on. And so she interviews all these different people and says, well, how did you know Brendan? How did you know Gary? What did you think was going on? And it starts to give you this big picture of like what really was going on. And then he weaves in all these different facts about school shootings and about gun violence and about different things. So he's got facts down on the bottom of some of those pages where it's relating what this book is talking about to real life. All right, next, Silent Alarm, okay, by Jennifer Banish. And so this is fairly new. I think it's a 2016. I can't remember when the copyright is, but it's fairly new. 2015, so a little bit. So what this is there's this girl named Alice, and Alice actually is the sister of the school shooter. So her brother Luke goes on a rampage at his school, and it's how she has to survive the aftermath, because she just can't be the same person anymore, and people around her, her friends, even her boyfriend, just really can't cope with it. And so it's her kind of coming to a new reality based on what has happened in the aftermath of her brother being a school shooter. So really great book. Next, This Is Where It Ends, okay, by Mariette Nijkamp. And this one is actually, I'm still in the school shooting book, so this is another school shooting book. This one actually takes place like super fast, okay, so it's 4 different perspectives, and it's only 54 minutes where this kid goes in and takes revenge, okay, but it turns out one of the main characters is the kid's sister. One of the other main characters is pretty much the enemy of the kid that's doing the school shootings. Another one is the enemy's sister, who happens to be the girlfriend of the shooter's sister. So there's a lot of like intertwining, different things that are happening with the main character who is shooting up the school. So anyway, so it starts off at 10 o'clock and it ends by 54 minutes later when the story ends. So I'm not going to tell you what else happens, but super interesting. I love how it goes from the different points of view, just like we had talked about in class. All right, keep going. All right, I think I'm done with all the school shooting books, so I'll keep going. Oh, no, actually I have one or two more. So the next one is Violent Ends. Now this one is really interesting. So once again, this is a whole bunch of different points of view, but it actually does tell a story. So the main character is this kid named Kirby Matheson, and so it takes you into Kirby's head, but then different chapters are from different points of view. Like they take you into, you know, the gun and how he came across the gun, and it's the neighbor and, you know, different people that knew him. And so once again, this is a whole bunch of great authors that are contributing to this volume. So I would highly recommend this one as well. And then Are You Still There sort of is a school, it's related to school. It's not a school shooting necessarily, but what it is that there was a, I think it was a bomb threat. And so this girl named Gabby, she was trapped in the girls' bathroom, and it's how she's dealing with it in the aftermath. So they did find the bomb. It didn't go off, but they didn't find the bomber. And so now they're starting a school helpline to try to be more proactive to helping students to you know, be more on top of that, to provide support if people are getting bullying. So Gabby volunteers for that, but then it's just turns into kind of a really stressful situation because there's somebody that's sort of stalking Gabby when she's on the hotline and things like that. So it's, I think, really, really interesting, a little bit different, you know, twist, I guess, on the idea of school violence. All right, then one of my favorite authors ever, Sarah Dessen. Any of Sarah Dessen's books I would recommend, and they really, really fit with the idea of, you know, contemporary lit that has to do with issues that young adults are interested in, critical issues. So Sarah Dessen's book, this one that I have in front of me is The Moon and More, but all of it has to do with, every single book has to do with pretty much, you know, people going through real life events. So there's this particular book, the main character is Emmeline, and she's over in Colby, this beach town, and so then it's just how she sort of deals with her father being absent, and how she, you know, can't ignore if she's going to want to be with this other guy or stay with Colby, and so she wants the moon and more, and it's how to decide, you know, what that actually means. She's got another one that has to do with homelessness. It's called Lock and Key. She's got another one called Just Listen that has to do with a girl who's being abused by her boyfriend. And it's really interesting because what happens is that in some of her books, Colby is a common like setting for her books. So she'll have another book. It's not the same characters at all. They don't even know each other, but they're in Colby. Or they also take place in this town, and they'll often go to the same high school. She'll mention the same settings. Sometimes they'll know of the same people. So it's just really interesting, and it kind of creates that picture of, like, you know, this diverse world that Sarah Dessen has created. So I would recommend any books by her. This one's called The Moon and More, but any of her books would be good. And they're all one and done books, so you don't need to read the first one or anything like that in order to understand. All right, then this one is called Hold Fast by Blue Balliet. What this one has to do is child homelessness. So the main character, her dad comes up missing, and it ends up because he's missing, they can't afford to pay their bills anymore, and so her mom and her brother and herself end up in a homeless shelter in Chicago. And so this is the whole adventure of that. There's the other Chris Crutcher book, Stoughton. This one's about a swim team, and it takes you through the adventure, I guess, of their senior year in high school. It's actually a school in Washington that is going to close the swim program the following year, and so the boys that are on the swim team are really trying to go out with a bang and have a really great season. And it's also their personal lives as they go through that. All right, then The Honest Truth by Dan Geimenhardt. So this one also takes place in Washington State. The main character has like terminal cancer, and he decides that he's going to go to Mount Rainier and just kind of climb the mountain and come what may. And so he runs away from home, and there's the main picture on the front. There's a crevice, and his dog's on the other side, and so just a lot of, it's a boy and his dog, and really the idea of like, how do you not give up in the face of adversity when you think you're gonna die. And so I really like this book. All right, next, Winger, okay, by Andrew Smith. And this one, it has to do with bullying. The main character goes to a boarding school, and he's on the rugby team, and the people on the rugby team are like super supportive. He's actually really, really young, so he's like one of those prodigy kids. He's 14 years old, already in high school, or maybe even 12. I can't remember how old he is. He's really young. And the main like team captain of the rugby team is actually gay, and the football players harass him, and he ends up like, it's pretty graphic at the end, but I think you'd really like it. There's a second book that kind of follows up with the following school year after whatever happens in this book happens. And I think that's it. So I'll just close up with that. There's a couple more, but I think you've got a good idea of some that you might like for the next book that you need to read. Thank you.